Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. US President Donald Trump declared that Israel and Iran have reached a complete and total ceasefire agreement, effectively ending what he called the 12-day war. However, Iran has completely refuted the claims made by the US President Donald Trump and said that no agreement on ceasefire has been reached. In a Truth Social post, Trump said, "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire." According to the Trump, the ceasefire will begin in approximately 6 hours after both countries complete their final missions. Iran will initiate the ceasefire and Israel will follow 12 hours later. The war will be officially considered over after 24 hours. Trump declared a ceasefire minutes after each side threatened new attacks. Iran launched missile attacks on US military bases in Qatar and Iraq. It was confirmed by the US president that Iran had launched 14 missiles following what he called the obliteration of Iranian nuclear facilities by the US and its allies. Following this, the Iranian foreign minister posted on X that the military operations of Iranian armed forces to punish Israel for its aggression continued until the very last minute. At 4 a.m., while saying that if Israel stops its illegal aggression against Iranians no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, they have no intentions to continue our response afterwards. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Gerald Al-Feel, he's a Middle East affairs expert, joining us live from Dubai. And we have another guest joining us for this discussion, Adrian Calamel. He is a terror scholar, joining us live from New York, US. Thank you for both for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, Adrian, Iranian missile attacks have hit US bases in Iraq and Qatar. How are these strikes being framed domestically and in US?
So it's good to see you again. In the United States, it's really been kind of framed by Trump's announcement that there's a ceasefire in place, and I was rather floored by that when I was on air and the presenter said that to me. I was like, "Oh, that's rather shocking," because I had not heard anything from the Islamic Republic agreeing to it, and since then they've been, Iraq Shia has been very vocal about this and saying we will not surrender. I don't, it's just trying to understand the domestic polling. It's hard to tell because there's a lot of noise out there, and people are saying, "Oh, it's the end to this," and it's mission accomplished. But the other part of us, and I'm one of these people that is questioning J.D. Vance's statements, saying that the regime's nuclear capacity is completely obliterated when there hasn't been a real after action or battle damage assessment. So I think with the more informed people, we're all kind of just watching and waiting for something. For the general masses and what you're hearing on the news, depending on what network it may be, it's no World War III, or hey, Trump saved us from American getting killed and reaching all our objectives. And I just don't know if we've done that as of now.
Our guest, Gerald Al-Feel, do the drone strikes in southern Iraq and Baghdad suggest a broader proxy war continuing, even if direct conflict winds down?
Good morning from Dubai. I don't think so, because if you look at markets, you have Asian markets just opening with a relief rally, and also oil prices are down, so that means stress is out of the market. Gold prices are slightly lower as well. So I always say, if you want to know what's going on in diplomacy and also in geopolitical stress situations like those, look at markets, and the oil price is almost a spike, plummeted. That means stress is out of the market, and we have to see. I agree with Adrian that there's a lot of background noise, a lot of skirmish and denials, and we do ceasefire, and the Iranian foreign minister says no, there's nothing like this in place. There's diplomatic hardball at the moment which is played, but markets say a different story, that the stress is over as of now. The next weeks, it will take weeks until airliners can fly normally out of the region. We can see Dubai International Airport from our home, for example. I never saw so little activity during last night, but I just saw a plane, an Emirates airline, Boeing 777, landing at Dubai International Airport. So slowly now airliners are coming back, and also this shows that the relief is there in relation to civil aviation, which shows that we have to now see where the diplomacy is going. Will Iran work together with the Atomic Energy Agency? Will all parties comply to a ceasefire? But markets say that the stress is over as of now.
And now we stay on this topic. I would like to ask from Adrian. Iran says there is no ceasefire agreement. Does this reflect a deeper breakdown in U.S. Middle East diplomatic channels?
It's interesting. Part of this reminds me of the deal that Trump made with the Houthis as far as freedom of navigation down the Red Sea. He, after Operation Rough Rider, said they had a peace deal or a ceasefire with the Houthis, but they were still able to fire free on Israel. With this deal right now that we have right here, it's another, and the thing that gives me pause, it's another Qatar brokered type deal. I mean, that's what they said the lines of communication were, and they were the mediator. And we've seen how many Qatar brokered ceasefire deals have fallen through in the Hamas Gaza situation. So it's really difficult to read. And then there's also, as Gerard rightly brought up, is the proxies, especially the Iraqi proxies, which have been noticeably quiet activity-wise, but have acted up tonight. So are we back to a war by type proxy? And does the U.S. get involved? It looks like any type of retaliatory strikes were done by the Israelis in Iraq from the early reporting. But again, it's fog of war right now.
And Gerald, let's take your take on that. There is no ceasefire agreement for now. It's not confirmed by Iran. And does this reflect a deeper breakdown between U.S. and Middle East, according to you?
I don't think so. On the contrary, President Trump is interested in good relations with the GCC. He just wrapped up a month ago an historic visit, historic in quotation marks, a landmark visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Emirates, UAE here. And they signed deals worth billions of dollars in relation to AI investments. Regarding Qatar, yes, this is a brokered. They also claimed that there's a Jerusalem Post claimed and reported that Qatar has brokered this ceasefire. Qatar is very interested in stability because they share with Iran the biggest non-associated gas field, the South Pass field, here in the Gulf waters. Non-associated gas field means gas is there without being mixed with oil, so that makes the gas very pure, make it very cheap to explore and unique in the world. So no, I think diplomacy now, the pathway is open to diplomacy. It will take, as I said, weeks until everything is settled. You see it also in your country where you are now, in India and Pakistan. Pakistan airspace is still closed for Indian airlines after the unfortunate fightings, aerial fightings and dogfights around the Kashmir region. So, and the same now we will see now the summer, lots of diplomatic activities, but again, markets say that the stress is over as of now.
And building on your answer, I would like to ask Adrian, that naturally makes us question about with missiles still flying and attacks reported, can we even call this a ceasefire in effect, or is this more a pause in escalation, according to you?
Great question, Asuma. Just looking at history and the way the regime works, it seems like a pause. They're unbelievably good at tactical retreats for maintaining their long-term strategic objectives. So is this just another tactical retreat on their part? It's obviously too early to say, but it does give them some time, buy them some time, at least a little bit of time to try and figure out what hit them, figure out who's in command of what. They're reeling their whole entire command structure on the military side, the IRGC. I wouldn't even call it a military. They need to reorganize. Khamenei needs to rethink this. But at the end of the day, he's about survival. The regime's about survival, and they can always wait out an American election cycle. They know that, and they're going to probably try and do the best they can to wait out Trump. I mean, that's always been the theory, is that they're going to try and do this, but Trump acted after 61 days, or told Israel, "You got the green light on this one." We'll see what happens. But they're master. The regime is mastered. They've mastered this ability of the tactical retreat for the strategic long-term goals.
And now, Gerald, do you agree with the assessment of Adrian? Do these mixed signals undermine the credibility of future U.S. brokered ceasefires in the region, according to you?
No, they won't. And going back to Adrian's point in relation to historical and empirical evidence, in the past, when there were ceasefires in the Middle East, there was always some skirmish afterwards. 1967, I mentioned the 1967 Six-Day War because Trump said just earlier that his brokered ceasefire will end this 12-day war. That's obviously a reference to the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel conquered the Sinai, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. And this was followed by the war of attrition, which went years after, where the Egyptian army inflicted heavy losses on the Israeli forces. And also the 1973 Yom Kippur or Ramadan October War was followed by a lot of skirmish afterwards. And even then the Minister of Defense, Israeli Minister of Defense, Moshe Dayan, said this ceasefire after 2 weeks was only on October 24th, 1973, was only on paper. The fighting continued. There was fighting on the Sinai and there was also fighting on the Golan Heights until spring 1974. And then only in Geneva thereafter they signed a final disengagement agreement on the Golan Heights. So in the Middle East, it's never like a light switch where everything is switched off and then the weapons are laid down. We have to, unfortunately, watch the situation, and there might be some skirmish and attacks here and there. But this is also a bigger case than, for example, in other skirmishes before. And the Israelis have never seen this impact of devastation and missile attacks before on Tel Aviv. So both sides will be very careful. Also, the regime in Iran will be careful because they have to now reconstruct, they have to reinvest, and have to also appease the population that the economy will go better. Otherwise, the instability will stay. But so far, it looks like the ceasefire will be installed, I think, during the summer.
And now, expanding on that, Adrian, could this become a pattern? Do you think short wars and U.S. Maybe attacking in Middle East and then U.S. declarations of peace, maybe in Truth Social, like just like Trump did, but no enforcement deals on the ground? What is your take on this?
Well, my take is that the U.S. approach to military engagements and it's changed. Okay, it's you're not going to see the large troop deployments, boots on the ground. You're going to have smaller teams operating. We're going to be working with our allies or near peer allies to try and neutralize the threats that we face around the globe. And that's one of the kind of the fear-mongering tactics that's used by people that say, you know, Trump, don't do this, don't take out the nuclear program, is that you're going to drag us into another 20-year war in Afghanistan or another war in Iraq. And that's the American appetite. The American public doesn't have the appetite for that. The American political class doesn't have the appetite for that. That's not the way wars are won right now. Warfare has changed, and we've recognized that. So it is kind of a hybrid of what you're going to see coming from us. It's going to be this, and you know, strength through power, and that power is on full display, and it is a truly awesome firepower display in Beijing and Moscow are both watching. So it sends a clear message, you know, peace through strength. That's the big takeaway from this. And there was another great point that Gerard brought up is about, you know, there's, I won't say all 90 million, 92 plus million Iranians are against this regime, but I would put that number at least 80 million Iranians. So that's one thing that the regime is going to have to contend with. It was what's going on inside the country when they've been oppressed for so long, brutalized, especially over the last, well, since forever, but since the Masa Amini protests. Some of the stories that have come out of there have been just absolutely horrible, and that's something Khamenei has to contend with now, and that's why I said he's got to regroup, because he has a chance of losing control of his country. Is the true fact, you know, the fact behind the matter.
Gerald and Adrian, you will stay with us now. We move on to our next story. Amid the lack of clarity over the ceasefire, there are also reports of ongoing strikes. Israeli military has said that missiles have been launched from Iran towards Israel a short while ago. Meanwhile, a drone has struck a radar system at a military base in southern Iraq, as per an AFP report, following a similar attack in Baghdad. Qatar has also now announced the reopening of its airspace, as per the Qatari Aviation Authority. This comes after Iran fired a series of missiles at the Gulf state, targeting the US's Al Udeid airbase hosted there. Now we go back to our discussion with Adrian and Gerald. Adrian, from security's perspective, can a ceasefire be declared by only one side, in like how it is right now, that only the Trump has or US has declared a ceasefire, but Iran hasn't confirmed this? Is this okay in international situations like this? Or there has to be a joint verification? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's one of the issues with that I have with Trump is, I mean, there's deliberate ambiguity with some of the things he does, and I understand that for tactical reasons, but I don't understand the end game here. If you're saying that there's a peace deal on the table, that Iran, the Islamic Republic, has accepted it, and early reporting was that the Israelis had asked for a peace deal. It just didn't quite smell right. You need everybody to come to the table and say that there's at least some signaling. Maybe, you know, there's back channeling, obviously, that's going on, but yeah, it's difficult when you don't have a bunch of parties agree. I mean, Trump has tried to say that he's achieved peace in the Ukraine, and you still have drones and ballistic missiles going back and forth in either direction. So I think this is, you know, just judging it, it's really premature for him to say something like this.
And Gerald, now that we know that Qatar has reopened its airspace, does this suggest confidence that strikes have now paused, or the ceasefire agreement will take place from both sides, according to you?
Yes, it does. The civil aviation activities are a good indicator of geopolitical stress. There were some interruptions also here in the UAE, but the UAE airports in Dubai and Abu Dhabi did a very good job. We were constantly messaged over during the night, last night, about passengers should contact the airport, should contact the airlines about what's going on. And yes, when there's reopening of airspace, that always indicates there's confidence that things move forward, because even in peace times, the GCC, the Gulf states, have reserved 70% of their airspace for military planes. That means the corridors for civil airliners are very narrow. And when you look at flight radar pages, like what you see global flight activity, now it's like a sickle. You see now from the Gulf states all around, avoiding even Sinai to go to Europe or to the US. And the civil aviation activity is a good indicator that confidence is back, but Iraq airspace is still closed, Iran is still closed, Yemen is always avoided by most airliners, the Yemen airspace, so the windows, the corridors are quite narrow. It will take some time until everything is back to normal. That will take time during the summer, and as we said, ceasefire, yes or no. If there are skirmishes, there might be also some disruptions, which we have to expect. But the good news for the airlines, of course, that the oil price has retreated significantly. Lower oil prices mean lower jet fuel costs, and that's good news for the airliners.
And now moving on to the future aspect of this, Adrian, I would like to ask if this isn't a true ceasefire or and just a temporary lull, what will happen and what can we expect, and will there be second round of strikes or continuation, or will there be more chances of this spilling on to other places like Jordan or Iraq, according to you?
I think there's a very good chance that, if Khamenei gets if he reads this correctly, he'll go back to the shadow war, go back to the asymmetric sandbox, and start targeting. Yeah, I hate to say this, but targeting American and Israeli targets abroad. Argentina is an example where they hit it in 92 and 94. They have avoided a direct confrontation with Israel and with the United States for the sole reason that they just can't compete. So there very well could be a shift where they say, okay, we're just going to stop doing this, and we're just going to continue. We're going to play around the margins. And if they go over if they cross over a line, then they'll get knocked down. The Qasem Soleimani strike was a classic example of that, where they were crossing the line in Iraq. They were getting ready to take over the embassy. They had run a dress rehearsal a couple of days before, and Soleimani was coming in, meeting with Mohandas from Kataib Hezbollah, and he took out both of them. So we could see these, and that's Trump's basic policies. And I expect coming out of this, it's going to be strategic. It's going to be maximum pressure on the economic front. Okay, that doesn't go away from the Islamic Republic. They're going to still be in an economic vice. All right, but the other part is you need to stay in line, or else we're going to hit you. And the Israelis are going to respond in kind if something happens. So that's where my mind takes me, and that's where if Khamenei was playing this smart, that's kind of the direction he would pivot to. But it remains to be seen. One thing is, he cannot sustain and continue to do this because he's got a finite supply of ballistic missiles. Radar defenses are completely down. Israel owns the sky. So he needs this break. He needs this pause.
And Gerald, what's your take on that? If this isn't a true ceasefire but a temporary lull, what are we expecting next from Iran and the other countries in Middle East as well?
I see more skirmish now on the diplomatic floor in the coming months, because the finger pointing has already started. For example, Jerusalem Post has published an article, an opinion piece this morning, that they say that they blame the Europeans of not really supporting and siding with Israel. President Macron is blamed of supporting an independent Palestinian state without consulting with the Israelis. And the Europeans, this is, for example, a party we haven't discussed at all. Going back to Adrian's point on China and Russia, yes, also they both have a huge interest in stability in the Middle East, China in particular, because most of its oil supply comes from the Gulf region, but the Europeans were completely left out. And President Trump has not mentioned or seconded the Europeans or the European Union for any support or whatsoever. So we see more and more the scenario getting into shape that the US is doing its way alone on foreign policy. He left the G7 summit earlier last week in Canada. That was also a bit of a slap to the Europeans, which the European countries have paid high emphasis on the G7 meetings. And the US is going now its own way and doing more and more. I will see more and more deals and agreements also with China and Russia on the big diplomatic floor, and skirmishes more on the diplomatic. The finger pointing has started and will continue. There will be a lot of diplomatic activities, background noise. The diplomats will continue to play hardball in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much, Gerald Alfiel and Adrian Calameral, for bringing your expertise to our conversation today. Now we move on to our next story. While reacting on the latest attack, Germany has said that Iran's retaliatory strikes on US bases are calibrated and has expressed hope that Tehran and Washington will now enter talks to avoid further conflict. In a post on X, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadepool said Iran's strikes were unacceptable and said Germany stands in solidarity with its partners in the Gulf states. The UN chief, in the meanwhile, has condemned the strikes by Iran. Antonio Guterres, spokesperson, has said that the UN chief has urged again for diplomacy to end the conflict between Iran and Israel. The spokesman said that Antonio further reiterates his call on all parties to stop fighting. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Karis Ria, she's a producer at Epoch Times and fellow with the Middle East Forum, joining us live from San Francisco. And we have another guest, Hashim Wahdatiyar. He's an international relations analyst, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you both for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World.
Thank you.
Carrie, I would like to ask your take on the Iranian missiles have now attacked and hit US bases in Iraq as well as Qatar. How are these strikes being framed domestically in the US?
Right, well, thank you for having me. I'm actually in DC, not in San Francisco as well.
Oh.
I would say this is largely performative. We know that these strikes were coordinated with the US ahead of time, and that means they were also likely coordinated with Netanyahu and I think even Putin. So I think that this is really just about saving face, as evidenced by the fact there is not a single injury that I have heard of yet, not even a scratch, which largely means that essentially Trump, who had evacuated much of the aircraft and the troops from these bases, knew that this was going to happen. So I think that what we're seeing is that Iran, by and large, has been a paper tiger, unless they have secret bases that we are not aware of, or secret storage depots where they have more ballistic missiles than we are anticipating. Then I think largely that this is going to be the end of any sort of retaliation in terms of what Iran decides to do.
And now, Hashim, I would like to ask you that what should viewers look out for in the next 24 hours to 48 hours, which will determine a trajectory in upcoming maybe few weeks?
Well, thank you. Remember a very important point, and that is that the hostility between Israel and Iran did not start a week or 2 weeks ago. It started decades ago, okay? And also between the US and Iran. I am not optimistic for this ceasefire even if this ceasefire take place within a few hours, it would not last, okay? Because the conflict in Middle East is much broader and it has so many dimensions, and bringing all these dimensions together and bringing all these protagonists together to solve the problems, the challenges among these specific three countries would take years in order to unravel the issues and also to put a full stop to this conflict for a longer period of time. That's one thing. The other important thing is that for the region, if a few countries in a regions are in war, that does not mean that the region is peaceful. Okay, so when there is a conflict between 2 or 3 countries in a specific region, the whole region needs to get in, pursue diplomacy, negotiations in order to stop that limited war. Otherwise, this limited war will expand further, as we saw today. It expanded to Qatar, it expanded to Iraq, and also to other countries if this ceasefire does not stop. The third very important point, and that is the only solution is diplomacy. Had we had this negotiation, which took place today, if this had taken place before this war, face-to-face confrontation start, we would be in a very better position. Now, after 12 or 13 or 10 days of the direct confrontation between Israel and Iran, no result other than destructions, damaging, killings, casualties. These are the only results, and neither side was successful. The only successful methodology was diplomacy.
And Carol, what is your take on that? What should our viewers expect from the next 24 hours to 48 hours with this this situation?
I'm not that great I'm not that great when it comes to speculation, but I'm very good at analyzing past events as well as what's happening right now. And if we look at the past, I would say that diplomacy has largely failed between Iran and the peace-loving free world. I mean, diplomacy only works against a rational actor, and Iran is not a rational actor. They have an end game. It is a Shiite supremacist caliphate, not just across the Middle East, but also across the West. And they really know only to do 2 things, which is lie and cheat. And we saw that with the JCPOA. And so I don't really know how diplomacy could possibly work when you have an actor that will agree on certain conditions, and behind your back, they will just be violating all of the terms and those conditions. So unfortunately, those kinds of stakes are just too high for a country like Israel. Maybe America can extend the diplomatic hand a little more than Israel can, but if Israel gets intelligence that says that Iran has enriched uranium to 60%, which reaches the 90% threshold of weapons-grade material, then I'm sorry, diplomacy is just not something that Israel can afford. This is existential. Iran has been clear about their goal of wiping this cancerous tumor that is Israel, as they say, off of the map. And so, like I said, when the stakes are this high, Israel had to act.
And now, building on that, Hashim, with missiles still flying and attacks reported, can we even call this a ceasefire in effect? Or is this more a pause in escalation?
Well, as I said before, we have to see, because the Iran's foreign minister also said that they do not trust the parties involved in the negotiations. Of course, when parties are there and the negotiations start to conflict, that means that there's no trust and confidence building. But one thing which is very, very important, we have we need to have two policies when it comes to Iran. One is the government in Iran, which should be treated differently, and one is the people of Iran's, the 90 million people in Iran, the children's, the women, the elders, okay? We should not penalize the 90 million civilians in Iran for what the government of Iran does, okay? That is one thing. Second thing is, yes, I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. I have a beautiful life, but that does not mean that when I'm sitting here, we have to try for something like the other governments are doing, and for the other governments, we need to penalize the civilians of Iran and also the innocent civilians of Israel. Look at the children there in Israel. Look at the bombs on the hospitals of Israel, and also the sick and the patients on the hospitals who cannot walk, right? So we also need to consider these all aspects. That is why if a diplomacy takes years, is way better than 2 weeks war.
And Karis, I would like to come to you now. How seriously, according to you, does Israel take Trump's statement here? And is there real coordination, or is Tel Aviv moving on its own terms?
I think there's real coordination, but that doesn't mean that Israel has much of a choice, I think, in the matter. I think they largely had to agree to the ceasefire. But look, the ceasefire hasn't started yet, right? I mean, they gave Israel, I think, 6 hours, and I think they gave Iran 12 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not in effect yet. So it's no surprise that we're still seeing missiles falling. But I'd just like to say that in terms of the innocent people suffering, it is only largely the innocent Israelis that are suffering. Yes, there have been 24 people that have been killed, and that is awful, and every life is tragic, and I believe that there has also been some civilian casualties. But the Iranian people are largely behind Israel taking out Iran's nuclear program. I mean, this is why you just see incredible numbers of Iranians dancing on their rooftops, watching Israel bomb military and nuclear assets. They're not bombing civilian assets. They're bombing only assets that have to do with the IRGC or the nuclear program. And this is why you're also seeing, banners hanging off of highways in Tehran that says death to the dictator and death to Khomeini. So I don't think that many people, I don't think that there's many innocent, I don't think that it's 90 million people that are suffering as a result of this war. Israel's calculations have been incredibly precise. I mean, this series of strikes that they pulled off, people are going to be studying this for decades. This is one for the history books. This is the stuff of legends, how incredibly precise they were. We saw them target IRGC members and members of the, Khomeini's advisor, all living in penthouses, by the way. And you just see a little hole through a high-rise building. This is incredible. On the flip side, you have Israelis being terrorized across the country as the Iranian regime is firing indiscriminate missiles. Now, thank God, as I said, they're largely a paper tiger, and so their military capabilities are not very successful, and that's why we've only seen, although each death is a tragedy and each life is precious, we've only seen 24 deaths on the Israeli end, including the hospital that they bombed, which is no doubt a war crime, but Israel had evacuated Soroka Hospital, and that's why there was no casualties from that event.
To our guests, you will stay with us. We have a breaking news. Israeli military has instructed citizens that they are now permitted to leave protected areas, signaling threat from latest Iranian attack is over. Now we go back to our discussion with Hashim Wahdatiyar and Karis Ria. And Hashim, according to you, how seriously does Israel take Trump's statement? Is there real coordination, just like Qatars has answered now, and or is Tel Aviv moving on its own terms, according to you?
Well, I think now, not in the past, and I don't know about the future, but right now, I see a good coordination between Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C. In particularly, the good friendship between the Prime Minister of Israel and also the President of the United States. Their friendship, if I'm not wrong, I read about it, it started in 1980s when Netanyahu was in the United States. And I see that there's a good coordination between the two, and that might have resulted in negotiations, and hopefully that would result in a ceasefire. And it is very, very unfortunate, the breaking news that we just received from you about the civilians in Israel and that where they have to be safe. That is bizarre, and that is painful. I see thousands of Israelis, they are not living in the homes that they were living a few weeks ago. They deserve to live in peace. They deserve to have way better life. The same Iranians, civilians, Iranians, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, Christians, and everybody, right? And I think that in the world where we have globalization, where we have technology, where we see AI, where we see the level of education and maturity, and this is 21st century, and having war in this century, I think that that is not the solution. If that would have been the solution, then I do not see the solution in the past 12 days of the conflict that started. Neither Iran has been wiped out of the earth, nor, as Iran was saying, to destroy Israel, nor it can destroy Israel, okay? If you ask a single question from 10 people, you will get 10 different answers. But my answer is peace, negotiations, diplomacy, no war.
Thank you very much, Hashim Wahdatiyar. He's an international relations analyst, and also Carrie Sriya. She's a producer at Epoch Times and fellow with the Middle East Forum. Both of them joined us from Washington, D.C. And now, well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.